as per some movies, we were supposed to have flying cars by now.
I'm really excited about what AI can do.
The most difficult decision you've made at work.
When COVID started, obviously it was downsizing.
Are you a good singer also?
Magic boxes connect to magic boxes.
The most interesting thing you have learned in your industry.
Tech is changing so fast now.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Digital Pakistan podcast. My name is Asma Ijaz Khan and I'm your host for the series. Last episode में हमें बड़ा अच्छा एक मौका मिला to understand, the local perspective when it comes to tech. And what we have realized is mobile technology, people like you and me, regular folks, if we don't have access to it and maybe a good internet connection, we don't have access to a lot of things. Local leader के perspective से हमने समझा कि पाकिस्तान कहाँ stand करता है. So we thought, why not we invite someone from the global stage and that can help us understand कि इस सारे landscape में where does Pakistan stand, what should we expect from our future and what can we fix. Now, we consider ourselves very lucky that we were able to find some time from an insanely packed schedule of Julian Gorman, who is the head of Asia Pacific, GSMA. And today he's willing to sit down with us and let us know what he thinks, we should be fixing and what we are doing good already. So, welcome to the podcast, Julian.
Well, I love to make time for it. And actually, it's a great way to finish the week in Islamabad.
Great. Right. So we have a very simple format, three main segments: the past, the present, and then the future. And then we'll play a few games in the middle just so that you and the audience, are also kept entertained. But the start obviously is always going to be introduction. We want to know about your role and designation, definitely, but also, who Julian is as a person. How did he end up at this role? Was this always the dream? What is he doing in this role, and what does the future look like for him as well?
I'm going to give you a bit of background then. So I'm a head of Asia Pacific for GSMA. GSMA is the global trade association for the mobile industry. Our core members are the mobile operators like Jazz and Telenor, PTCL. We unite the digital ecosystem or the mobile digital ecosystem around the world. We're most famous for our Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, which attracts more than 100,000 people every year. But our core is really around advocacy, supporting our members, policy advocacy, mobile for development, of which we do a number of programs in Pakistan as well, and technology programs and other work to help the sustainability of the industry and also for the benefit of customers and digital economies around the world. How I got here is an interesting question. Actually, originally, I'm a coal miner. I studied in coal mining out of university. I went to engineering, mechanical engineering, then I did law. But mining, I thought was not something that was going to be my lifelong future, going underground, everything else. And so about 25 years ago, when the telecoms boom was really starting around the world, I chose to get out of mining and went into telecoms in Australia originally for a company called Vodafone, which is one of the big global operators. After that, I moved to the UK with Vodafone. And then since then, I've worked in Africa, Central Asia, and Southeast Asia. And I joined GSMA about 9 years ago because after spending about 20 years or nearly 20 years in the mobile industry and seeing how mobile technology can really help people transform lives, transform society, I thought it was time for me to give something. And GSMA as a trade association is about giving, about trying to help the benefit of the users, the economies and nations. And so I thought it was about my turn to contribute. So I've been here a little longer than I thought it would be, but I am enjoying it. And actually it's times when I come to visit places like Pakistan where you really see people on the ground and you really see how mobile technology can really change people's lives from the moment they don't have connectivity to the next day, like a week later or something. And they're learning and they're starting businesses and they're getting excited about being online and they're connecting with the world. That's what really makes my job exciting.
Right. If consider anything was possible, what kind of a tech product or, thing would you like to invent yourself, or you would like someone else to invent for you because it's going to make your life easier?
So immediately I was thinking that I'm a terrible handwriter. I can't write to save my life. But I've also found actually my typing is getting as bad. Like it's very hard to type as fast as I can think. And so I would really like to be able to think typing.
Something similar to Stephen Hawking.
Yes, some sort of Stephen Hawking type thing. Because I find frustratingly, especially on a phone, that like my thumbs, I don't know, lose coordination with it. I'm a terrible typer. And it only gets worse. And now where you get, when you type in some messages, they assume something, like if you put the full stop between or something or other. So there's autocorrect, which is like puts in weird words sometimes. But then there's like the other day, my wife sent me a message saying, "What are you talking about?" Because I left her accidentally put a full stop in. And so it accidentally imported this Austrian website. And she's like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah. So you've been a victim of autocorrect. Yeah, it can be, but it makes conversation interesting also sometimes. And some people are worse than others, but all right. So we'll move on to our first segment, which is the past. For this, you have to use, your memory and imagination. Close your eyes and go back to being like 20 years old and tell us, what did technology look like back then? What any fun instances or stories that you can share with us?
I'm actually, so when I say I was a minor, I have two older brothers and two older sisters. My father worked for Telstra or Telecom Australia in the day, so the original incumbent fixed wire operator. All my older brothers and sisters worked for Telstra as well at some point. So I was a bit of the black sheep to go to mining. Ironically, I come back to...
Yeah, it wasn't...
And they've all moved out of telecoms. But in those days, when I was growing up, I'd go visit my father at his work or something. And in those days, you had the big switches, like mechanical switches, where you walk into a big room with lots of things, clickety-clack, whatever, with people flying. So that was a sort of basis growing up. But then just out of university, I went to the US and I got a job driving a limousine. And in that limousine was one of those very first mobile phone, like car phone things, big chunky thing that on wires and whatever else. And I used to drive people to New York. And there was a couple I used to drive to the New York sports club, and I'd have to wait there for a couple of hours. And I resisted for the first couple of times, but eventually I was like, I'll just call friends. And I used to call friends home in Australia. And I'd talk for hours on this amazing device. And I'd get friends in the car when I wasn't taking customers, and they'd get on the mobile phone and call. And because all my friends were international, and they call home with this amazing technology. We're driving in a car on the freeway and the phone's working. Of course, the phone bill was horrendous, like hundreds of dollars. But for me, that was the start of my view of mobile technology and the fact that, that I was there. I mean, this was like 1992 or something or other, like in the very early days. Even then, it's an amazing technology to connect people. And when you think of what mobile technology does now, like how far we've traveled in such a short time, it's amazing.
So now moving on to our first game called Rapid Fire. You know how it works, right? You just have to answer the questions very quickly. So the most interesting thing you have learned in your industry?
How difficult and complex the technology is. Like, I would say, I know this is not a quick answer. When I first started in telecoms, I thought I understand how it worked. Now it's just magic boxes. Magic boxes connect to magic boxes.
Right. Okay, the most difficult decision you've made at work?
When COVID started, obviously it was downsizing and things, letting people go, letting good people go because you just have like a downsizing because of economics, when there's so much more to do.
Do you think Pakistan is ready to compete with the world when it comes to technology?
I think Pakistan has shown actually you can lead in technology and stuff like freelancers. Pakistan is like a world leader in freelancers. And I think it's those little gems that Pakistan needs to focus on nurturing, because I think there's a great potential.
And since you're from the mobile industry, I can't help but ask, do you think we're ready for 5G?
Use cases, especially where you have to compete on a global basis. So I'd say it's an evolution of technology that countries don't have to rush into. It's not about being first, because in fact it's 5 years old now. It's about doing it at the right time, the right way, and to suit the economy.
What's the most unusual job you've done in your life?
I collected eggs. When I was a kid, I collected eggs in a chicken farm. About 13,000 eggs a day. Really? Yes. Don't worry, I would never do it. I wouldn't recommend it. You go home and you smell like a chick farm. I mean, you smell like a chicken house.
But did you enjoy it that time?
No, I hated it.
It was just a way of earning money?
It was a way of earning money.
Okay, nice. Are you personally good with tech?
As I say, I'm concerned I'm not keeping up with AI. My wife rings me from the other side of the world to say, something's not working. I try and say, can you take a picture of it or can you show me?
Oh, so you're very good at it then.
But I usually fall down. So I try and help. And people, my family has never understood what I did. I mean, because most people think if you work in the telecoms industry, you sell SIM cards.
Yeah, yes.
And so I've been asked many times over many years, can I fix a phone or something or other? No.
If you had an autobiography, what would be the title?
Can we go faster?
Wow. And do you like Pakistani food?
I'm not sure Pakistani food likes me, but barbecue. And trust, I wouldn't even know the names of the food I try. I mean, I love any country that enjoys a barbecue. And Pakistan seems to be very high on that list, barbecue.
All right. So moving to our next segment, it's the present. So in this, we're going to talk about your current role mostly. In your current role, what are the 2-3 main things that you think you've done that is your way of giving back to the society?
So when I was in Myanmar as head of digital, my mission was to give every Myanmar citizen something they could do on their smartphone while they're waiting for the bus and improve their life. So whether it was education, health, agriculture, anything else, to give them an app that in that 2, 3, 5, 15 minutes that they're waiting for the bus, they could learn something or that would help them with their life. And delivered that. So I was happy. That was sort of like one of my things I would claim as fame. Benefit society. And actually the organization is full of people that's why they've joined. And I think it's nice working for an organization like that. But I mean, here in Pakistan, we have a number of people who work on our innovation ecosystem, where they're supporting startups which are coming from Pakistan, also from around the region. Get grounded, help engage with the mobile industry, get started. We take donor funding from people like the UK and Australia to help with that. I think they're the guys who I sometimes get a little bit jealous of because on a daily basis they're working on the ground and stuff like that. But again, that's why it's nice to come and visit Pakistan, go for dinner with them and hear their stories.
Interesting. Now we'll talk a bit about policy and regulation, right? So how does GSMA engage with regulatory bodies in the country? And compared to your experience, in other countries, is it easier? Is it harder? And things that you've picked up, over the years?
So the first time I came here, it was 2018. GSMA has had a long history actually in Pakistan, high engagement in Pakistan. Part of that has been the size of the country. Part of that's been the regulatory nature of the country, need of support and help. But also the operators here have been very connected to GSMA's boards, have been very high up in GSMA's presence. When I came in 2018, we had a small round table in the Serena Hotel. And actually, it was that round table where we were trying to convene the nation's stakeholders to talk about what needs happening in Pakistan, which inspired the strategy which Asia Pacific GSMA still runs on, what we call Leading Nations. In Leading Nations, and Saira Faisal, who's head of Pakistan here, leads our operations here in Pakistan, is where we've got so many things going on in Pakistan, so it's mobile development, advocacy, technology programs, and everything else, is that we bring all those assets, all those efforts together into a single initiative around helping Pakistan on its journey to be a digital nation. And in doing that, we have developed very good relationships with the minister, the ministry, the chairman of the PTA and the PTA, with the bubble operators as well. And I would say, actually, our engagement in Pakistan is our benchmark, our lighthouse in the region. It's so well.
So what policy changes or recommendations would you suggest to improve mobile connectivity and digital inclusion in the country?
That's a big landscape. GSMA is on record with a lot of things over the last couple of years, reports and things about the taxation, diversity and inclusion, increasing mobile broadband penetration subscribers. I think my singular or priority message after being here this week would be around the need to set a vision, and not a vision of just saying, okay, we want to be digital, but actually set targets for 10 years away or something or other, and then draw the line back and say, okay, well, what do we have to achieve each year? Because I think there's been a lot of macroeconomic and other circumstances happening here where I've got people, there's an urgency and there's a need, everyone accepts there's a need to do something, and that digital can provide an avenue to growth. But because the vision and the horizon is so short, it's easy for people to get lost and not be aligned. We need to set that sort of North Star so that we can all look up and go, okay, we're all going together.
You talked about the youth in the beginning, right? And you mentioned in Indonesia, that youth really helped them, pick up on technology. Now we're at the same position. What kind of things do you think, the government or maybe the operators themselves should be doing to target this portion of the population? Because they can really help us move into the next phase very quickly, right?
I think, aside from growing the penetration, there is different usage characteristics of youth. And it's incumbent on government and maybe the people, decision makers, to actually start to understand that maybe there's some cultural difference or behavioral differences. One thing I would say is in Indonesia, there's very much a messaging-driven culture. And actually that has helped accelerate digital adoption. And funny enough, if I think about when I first went to work in Indonesia around 2008, actually you couldn't make a voice call. Like, voice calls were very bad. The network was terrible. They always have drop calls and everything else. And it pushed everybody into BlackBerry Messenger or messaging services. But now, actually, Indonesia, they do the surveys and everything else, actually messaging is the preferred connection to people. But by doing that, actually, it's accelerated digitization of a whole bunch of other things. The reason I mention it is it's just a different behavior than actually the people who are making the decisions about the network and the policies and regulations and things like that. And so while there can be some obsession about circuit switch voice, actually the economy was running on messaging. I actually spoke to a minister once in Indonesia, who I won't name, but I said, well, what have you done to help grow innovation? And his comment was, well, nothing. We just let it go, which is not necessarily the right answer. But what he was trying to say was we didn't stop it. When actually we saw it growing and we encouraged it along rather than trying to stop it. And I think technology is changing the way culture and society works. And hopefully it's giving access to people to new opportunities, whether that's work or even just information and understanding each other. And we need to make sure that we're nurturing the benefits while being more like a protective parent, maybe, of making sure that obviously there's risks that we need to manage and there's concerns we need to be at. But it's about we also engage all of society in that decision, and that decisions are not left to maybe a group of people who don't really understand, maybe.
Yeah, true. That's interesting because, a lot of the kids, I think sometimes people don't understand the kind of impact that they can have on like moving these policymakers, right? Sometimes we just let things happen to us. So if it's a taxation policy or something, we just listen, we're like, oh, fine, it was announced on the TV and this is what's happening. We'll just, make do with whatever is happening. But maybe Gen Z, I think, is a little different because they really feel like, they have a voice and they want to use it. So maybe, using mobile technology and their voice together, they can really make a difference. Yeah. So now coming on to the social and economic impact, right? A country like Pakistan, these things are very important for us. Do you think mobile connectivity, when it increases or it improves, it can really impact the economy of a country as well?
So, the whole premise of connected women and diversity, making sure that equal access is because, women are underutilized resource in some sense. And there's plenty of studies, I think, even studies from Pakistan, which show the business and the family impact that can happen from a mother or somebody having access to a smartphone. Not only its health advice or education, but ability to start a business from home, things like that. So it's about, equally connecting the economic potential of society and culture to artificially or to hinder half the population is to, hinder the nation's perspective, potential.
So the initiative isn't really new, right? It's been... So what kind of progress have you guys made on it?
With the support of, various governments and places like Gates Foundation.
The last case, because they could sing, we were like, if you can't answer a question, then they would sing. So are you a good singer?
I'm a terrible singer, so let's not go to singer. I'll be honest.
Okay, okay. Then we can test it out. Have you ever lied on your resume?
I don't believe so. But in saying that, I haven't produced a resume in about 15 years. So,
Even though you've moved jobs in the middle, right?
I don't think I've applied for a job probably in the last 20 years or so. I mean, the jobs have been people saying, can you come?
Yeah, so I think after a certain while in your career, this is how it happens then. All right, interesting. If you weren't in your current profession, what would you be doing?
Before I joined the GSMA, so when I went from Urdu to GSMA, I took a couple of months, I was on gardening leave. I considered opening a bicycle store. I like to ride mountain bikes, and I used to race mountain bikes in South Africa and stuff. So if I had the choice, if I wasn't doing this, then I'd probably be riding bikes somewhere, somehow as a business.
Is it part of the retirement plan?
It's sort of a part of the retirement plan too.
Okay. If you had a chance to retire today, the next question, would you?
If you say retirement, it's like sit on the front porch in a rocking chair. No. If I had the opportunity to give another person the opportunity to have my job or something or other, and while I went and did something else, yeah.
Do you have a specific goal in mind you want to achieve in this role? It's something that you're working towards.
So from a team point of view, so industry aside,
Traveling involved in your role, right?
I spend a lot of time traveling.
And what's the one thing you love about your job?
I love coming to places like this, meeting new people who inspire you to do things, inspire me that there's more to be done, or there's other ideas, other ways to do it. It's hard. You can't beat that. Before COVID, my ambition was actually I'd set a plan to go on a holiday in northern Pakistan, just to see the Himalayas.
Okay, yeah.
This trip, I've come and my GSMA has said I can't travel around without a security guard and whatever else, a driver. So I'm very disappointed that, because I was expecting to come back and make a plan for later this year, I would go to North Pakistan. Yeah. So visiting the Himalayas in northern Pakistan is top of my travel bucket.
I wish it happened soon then. It is a pretty place, so you should go see it. Our best professional advice you've been given in your life so far?
It's not about the money. It's about influence and power.
And do you pass on this advice to other people also?
To be honest, I only learnt it like a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
I wish I'd learnt it earlier. I wish I'd learned the value of networking and understanding people's motivations and how things and decisions are not always driven by facts.
Interesting. Your biggest professional pet peeve?
Pet peeve, professional one. My style is very open and transparent. I like people just to say how it is. My head office is in London. London's culture is different.
Yeah. Okay.
They can say something to really nice to you, and it's only later that you realize that wasn't nice. So the culture in business, I like to be, straight up and let's get it done. Doesn't always work in all cultures.
Yeah, it's a challenge though. Not everyone believes in that. All right. Moving on to our next segment, which is the future. What do you wish the future generation, the creators and the leaders of tomorrow, will do towards this economy, and what kind of things should they focus on to actually make the world a better place to live in?
I think mobile technology has incredible power to change the world for the better. But I increasingly think about how the relationship between technology and culture and society. And I think it's important that we do think about our next generation or the generations beyond that. In many things that we do now, and mobile technology contributes to this, we're very short-sighted. We take sound bites, we watch 10-second videos, we don't even listen to full songs anymore. We do bits and pieces. Attention spans are struggling. So I think we need to make sure that we are thinking for future generations and planning for that. Because I think, back in the, hundreds of years ago or whatever, I believe a human 1,000 years ago was probably just as smart as a human now is. We haven't evolved significantly. We know more. We have more technology. But we need to make sure that we're using it well, and we're planning that we're going to be around for hundreds of years.
Do you have any like advice for the younger generation from the perspective that, because you work in the mobile technology industry, you see like the benefit and at the same time the disadvantages can bring to people? Do you have like a certain piece of advice for them how to utilize this piece of technology for the better, and how to maybe like like attain a proper balance between not losing themselves to it, but actually utilizing it to become a better version of themselves?
I mean, it's a good point you mentioned about not losing yourself in it. I think it's part of life now. It's not everything, and we mustn't lose sight of the physical world we live in, everything, all the benefits that bring. I think if we looking forward, the challenge is that we keep a good perspective. Because there's always in society there's a balance between individual and community. I live in Indonesia because I enjoy the culture is very much about community. Many countries are moving very strongly to the individual. And I think it's important that young people are thinking that, there needs to be balance. There's not one or other is right. But also in their lifetime, technology and society and everything else is going to change a lot faster than their parents. Their work career, my dad worked for the same company for 40 years, something or other. I'm not sure what the circumstances are here exactly, but I'm pretty, you can pretty well guarantee youth now will not have the same job or same company for enduring. When I think in my life, I've gone through maybe 10 or more jobs. Typically, it used to be about 3 years at a time, but now I've been at GSMA for 6 years, or at the head of the region of 7, 8 years. I've never thought it'd be that long, but the technology industry I worked in has changed so much in that time that they're going to at times feel like maybe society, that the ground they're standing on is not solid. And I think it's about staying nimble and learning, never stop learning. Then there's no end to learning now. I think in the old days you could maybe get away with it. Yeah,
but now you can't.
No, you can't.
You can't. Do you have kids, Julian?
I have one kid, 14 years old.
How do you a lot of people find it really hard to connect to that kind of generation. What are the things that...
How do we do it? I bought a PlayStation 5, so when he comes and visits.
That's...
Well, PlayStation, that helped a lot. I think, I think I mentioned before, I don't think there's a teenager on the planet who thinks their parents is cool and hip and knows what it is. Next month, I'm going on a holiday with him for just me and him, and we're going to go watch the football in the UEFA Cup, and we're going to go watch an air show and whatever else. It's about, actually, that holiday is all about non-digital things, experiencing. It's sort of worked out that way, but I mean, it's planning is a digital, but execution will be all physical. We want to go watch the football, catch the train, the high-speed train in Europe, and go to an air show and watch the planes, and go to the prom. Proms is something that happens in the UK where, you go to a castle and there's a big orchestra and you have fireworks and cannons and play old music and, very British rah-rah stuff. It's all about experiences. And I think for me, it's that perspective. There's a place in your life for digital, but don't overlook this world's a lovely place.
What is your personal long-term vision for mobile connectivity in the country, in your role?
We'd like to see penetration of subscribers and smartphone adoption grows. By the end of the decade, the unfortunate thing is we're still seeing less than half, maybe 45% penetration. Now the population's rising, so that's more people, but penetration is still lagging other markets. At the moment already, it's about 50% behind some of the other peer markets. We're about 40%. Other markets are around 60%. So I would like to see, a significant rise in penetration, getting people on board, because that also provides, it creates a national asset, not only for innovators to maybe provide services to, but also at times of, natural disasters or things. Smartphones in hands are an asset. It's a way to communicate people get information. So good quality connectivity, smartphones in hands, and local innovations, local services, solving local problems. I think that would be a very good end of sort of decade target.
So we have this thing where, our guest leaves a question for the next guest. Before you leave your own question, you have to answer the question, that the last guest left for you. They did not know who you are. So they just left a random question. The problem that they identified was, we need to compete with India when it comes to IT exports. That's the dream, right? We want to be impactful in the global economy. But what they see is there's a huge gap between the kind of graduates that come out of the university when it comes to skill set and the kind of people that we want, on ground in the industry for jobs. How do you think, corporations or maybe academia can help bridge that gap between the kind of talent that is required and the kind of talent that is being produced?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, what you asked before about what's a challenge for my son, it's I think, how can I help prepare him for the workforce? Because he's in high school now and he's learning things. And when I asked him about his subjects, this, you're doing creator stuff, online creating and things like that. It was when I grew up in school, we used to write a story in a book or something. It's a completely different change. But it's understanding that actually that is also not a static destination. When you finish school, it's not over. And yes, you have to really think about the role you're going to play, not just the qualification you have.
And again, mobile, comes into play again. If you want to learn something, it's available. You can go onto YouTube. I can learn programming if I'm interested,
There's
right?
so much resources available online.
So do you think the expectations of employers have also increased because there is so much information out there? Before it wasn't that simple, right? You would only get a certain type of people and then they knew a certain type of skills and you had to employ them no matter what. But right now, there's so much competition. So if someone's interested in a certain skill, they would basically learn it at home. They don't even have to go to university for it. So then there's maybe a lot of competition for it.
Oh, there's definitely a lot of competition. What people are willing to do to learn, to be competitive now. I think, I have an engineering degree, I have a law degree. I'm admitted to the Supreme Court in Australia. To be honest, I've never done any of that stuff. I was an engineer once upon in a coal mine. But to be honest, my qualifications have not... there've been indications of my capability of thinking, but they have not got me a job anywhere.
It was your interest, right? And your passion in that policy. Yeah. Do you want to leave a question? You have to leave a question actually for the next guest. We don't know who that would be, but something that you want to ask.
So, especially before joining GSMA and even during GSMA, I have a passionate interest in innovation and startups solving local problems. So my question for the next guest would be what is the Pakistan app that they use or they see as innovating and changing their life? What do they like about it? What they don't like about it?
One app.
Okay,
interesting. That's a tough question actually. So now there's another tradition. Whoever comes onto the podcast, they have to decide something that we would then, give away to our audience members, why a social competition. So what is it, something that, you want to give away?
I would like to, GSMA is most famous for Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And I hope this would be a gift of value to your audience, is that I would offer a VIP pass to Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, which will give them access to all the conference or the exhibition, be one of more than 100,000 people in Barcelona next year. That means a couple of thousand euros.
Do they have to have a certain, is there a requirement criteria that they need to match to win something like this?
No. Whoever you choose to give it to, they get themselves to Barcelona and we'll give them the VIP experience.
That sounds fun. That sounds really cool. Looking forward to the next competition. Maybe we'll also participate in it. Okay, now, the conversation, obviously the questions are done. We have to obviously conclude. Thank you so much again for, taking out the time and joining us here. But I would still like you to do this one thing. Maybe you can help me close the podcast. You said you don't know any Urdu, but maybe you can learn something today and help me close the podcast. So, you have to look into the camera and tell them, Dekhne ka shukriya.
Dekhne ka shukriya?
Shukriya. Yes.
Dekhne ka shukriya.
That was it, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Have a nice day. Bye.